support I had from my wife, all of my rugby mates, physios that were coming in to help. I was in a really fortunate situation. Like I think Pete once said, like if a bag of coins got thrown up in the air, you know, all of them landed heads. Like that were the odds of my situation, given the level of the seriousness of my injury at the time.
Virgin Radio. Our next guest is a former rugby player whose life changed in an instant in a tragic accident after a truly inspirational recovery. He tells his story in a new film, The Mountain Within Me, in cinemas from the 23rd of August. So please welcome the motivational mountain climber himself. It's Mr. Ed Jackson!
You need to follow me around and just intro me everywhere. That is great.
Also, it's quite lads, Jackson! Yeah. I feel like, you know, you need that sort of hype. So, I watched it last night, the film, and I mean we were talking about the view from in here, and you were standing out in the hallway appreciating the view in here, looking out at, you know, it's concrete jungle, it's a lovely vista, but the views that you have seen of late and your ability to appreciate them, I just kind of observed your little moment of taking it in, and that runs through the entire documentary. Let's go back for people who haven't, who are not familiar, let's say, with your story. And I'm conscious that I don't want to turn what was a life-changing event into give it to us in a nutshell. But like, you know, where did this all start, or what was that moment of change?
I mean, in a nutshell, I was a professional rugby player. That was my life up until the age of 27, when I had a really serious accident, diving into shallow water, broke my neck. I was paralysed from the shoulders down. After a week, I showed no recovery, and they told me that was it. So obviously I had to come to terms with that massive change. But fortunately, like 48 hours after that, my toe flicked, and then bit by bit, my body started coming back to me. Now, like my current situation is I very much still have a spinal cord injury. I'm an incomplete quadriplegic, or a walking quad, as we're sort of known in the inner circles.
Miracle.
But so one of my left side doesn't work properly, so I can't really lift my leg off the ground very far. My hand, all of my sort of muscles down the left hand side of my body are weak, and on the right hand side I've got no sensation, so it's like switched over. It's very complicated. And then I also live with the underlying things that go along with spinal cord injury, like bladder, bowel, sexual function, temperature regulation, all of that fun stuff. But I'm way further on than I should have ever been, so I actually feel very lucky. Yeah.
And I think, you know, you say your toe flicked as if it happened, you know, on its own. I was, you know, kind of struck by, I don't know why the word defiance kept coming to me, you know. There was that kind of sense of obviously the enormity of what has happened, and your whole world and life has changed in a second, and that kind of landing. And then the doctor saying you'll never walk again. And, you know, I guess that's the crushing blow. But for you, it became this kind of turning point, like a drive to go, you know, I mean, not watch me, because it felt like you weren't sure. It was a kind of an impossible challenge to set yourself, but there was definitely a sense of, oh, right, now it's on.
Yeah, they were right to say that. It was based on the test results that were done every 24 hours after your accident. They make a prognosis at 7 days. So that was how I was presenting as a complete injury. But it was...
Which means, like, it's not going to happen for you.
It means no matter how hard you try, you've got a complete cross-section of your spinal cord that's now not transmitting signals, so below your level, that's it. Fortunately, there was still some attachment. What had happened was I'd hit my head so hard, or my neck had such trauma from being dislocated. The spinal shock that your spine goes into to protect itself normally lasts 24, 48 hours. Mine had lasted a week. So that's why I was still presenting as a complete injury. But when I got told that by the surgeon, it was right. It wasn't like a I'll show you sort of thing. It was like, okay, they verbalized what we've all been thinking, but like there's a line in the sand now. And I remember looking at my mum and my wife and just thinking, this isn't just about you. I was like, I need to do everything I can to just try and be independent again, so that I could use a wheelchair and use my arms and my hands.
So that was the goal at that point.
That was the goal. Because of my level of injury, that was a possibility.
Yeah.
And only because that I thought in 6 months' time, if I look at myself in the mirror and I know that I haven't tried and I'm in this situation and my mum and my wife are caring for me, I won't be able to live with myself. But if I have done everything I can and I'm still, in the same situation and having to care for me, at least, it was out of my hands. So that was the only aim. But I didn't expect 48 hours later, the proper sort of Kill Bill moment, if you've seen it, of the toe wiggling,
awakens.
Yeah.
And it is a very moving kind of moment, and your friend is around, and you can see the kind of joy, because it's immediate. You're like, oh, hang on, there's a connection here. There's a possibility, and that was kind of the beginning, of you maybe believing or going, okay, right, whatever I was told about the completeness of this injury, I'm now gonna, choose to disregard or at least challenge.
Yeah, exactly. And it is funny how the bar gets lowered quite a lot when you're in a situation like that and you're wondering whether you're ever going to be able to walk again, all these sorts of things. A wiggling toe was probably the most, joyous moment of my life, even having played professional sport for 10 years. So then you're exactly right. What it meant was I didn't have a complete injury. So there was an opportunity to make some improvement. Yeah. How much improvement? I had no idea. I still at that point was, if someone had offered me a wheelchair and to, be independent, I would have 100% taken it. Because there was no one was expecting me to get to walking again, and definitely not expecting me to get to climbing mountains.
But I mean, your commitment to that recovery, what do you think, the physio that you went through, and it feels like the physio that you got had, was amazing, and had this kind of belief that intense physio at the early stages of a spinal cord injury was the way to go. But hours upon hours of physio a day, a kind of a full-time job. Was that appreciation of physio? Because you had a couple of injuries where you'd rehabbed for 6 months. So you obviously knew the correlation between the input and what you got back. Do you think that was a big, made a difference for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the physio, talking about a guy called Pete Bishop, I met him in Bath, and he's ex-army, and he knew I was ex-sport or sport. So he would, the resources within the NHS are limited because of the funds and stuff, but the individuals are incredible. So he knew that he could leave the room and challenge me to do 200 reps of something, and I'd try and do 300 reps of something. And I'm very fortunate that my whole life, recovering from a spinal cord injury, is effectively doing thousands and thousands of reps of stuff, which wasn't alien to me. If recovering from a spinal cord injury was, spending hours and hours on a spreadsheet, some people would be really good at that. I'd still be in hospital. It's just, it fell into my lane a little bit with what was going on. And then on top of that, the support I had from my wife, all of my rugby mates, physios that were coming in to help. I was in a really fortunate situation. I think Pete once said, if a bag of coins got thrown up in the air, all of them landed heads. That were the odds of my situation, given the level of the seriousness of my injury at the time. Yeah.
But I mean, the challenge that you set yourself to do Snowdon was okay, pal, we had a wiggly toe, don't be getting ahead of yourself. But you said, I would like to do to the team that you were working with, who had obviously seen that there was grit and there was, a work ethic there, and there was certainly an opening, let's say. But I mean, talk about running with it. You said, I'd like to do it at the 12-month mark. And they're like, well, what, net? Yeah. It's 12 months from now. And you're like, no, in 12 minutes, effectively. Yeah. And so you started at the beginning, at the bottom of that mountain, not really knowing whether you'd actually make it up there, with 70 people now, a slight audience thanks to a Twitter call out there to support.
Yeah, I mean, I announced, I started this blog on Instagram and people started following it. It was just life in hospital, effectively, and I put it out there saying I'm going to do this, but I didn't actually expect to get to the top. I just wanted to show people that I was on my feet, so that it sent the message that being told never walk again, now he's on his feet, that maybe for some people, they could defy their prognosis, or to just keep trying. For some people it's possible, for some people it's not. Like I said before, if you've got a complete injury, you can't. But I did not expect, when I turned up, to walk past this group of about 70 people and them all to start following me. I was like, why are you all walking behind me? And it turned out they had come to support. And that was the most amazing thing about the day. Of course, then I was like, oh, no, I'm going to have to actually get to the top now. So that took 9 hours. But it was all the people I met and them telling me their stories and how much me sharing my story had helped them. And it was the first time I felt of like any use since my accident. I just felt like a burden up until that point. And it was because my accident was having a positive impact for other people. And then I sort of clung on to that and was like, okay, well, how else can this help other people? And literally, by definition, if enough good can come from this situation, then you can change it from a bad thing that happened to a good thing that happened. And that's the sort of mission I set out on.
And mission is the word. I've written it down. I'm like, that's where it feels like it turned. That was, you know, another turning point. I have a friend who had a very similar accident. And so when I was watching, you know, I was kind of watching through two lenses, and I messaged him last night, and he said he was acutely aware of you. And he said, when you have an accident as severe as this, you get a lot of "you will never," and so you're met with that on a kind of constant basis. And some of it is, you know, medical, but I think it's a lot of it is protective. And Ben, one of the beneficiaries of your charities, we'll get to that, had kind of said so many people meet you with, oh no, you definitely can't do that, or you'll do more harm than good. And they're, you know, comes from different places. But what he said was that it was so powerful. Your challenging of the narrative gave him, and presumably countless others, permission to challenge that too, within themselves and with medical professionals as well. And that's just incredibly hopeful and powerful.
People paved the way before me. Like, I was taking inspiration from others. You know, people like Matt Hampson, who was a rugby player who got injured 10 years before me. He's got a complete spinal cord injury. So he's C1, got a permanent ventilator, full-time care. But he's created this amazing charity, and he's a wonderful person. He's living a really fulfilling life. Yes, way more difficult life on paper, but still living this really purposeful, positive life. And it got me thinking, well, you know, if Matt can do that, then what excuse have I got? You know, you've got to make the most of the cards you're dealt. And sometimes those cards aren't very nice at the beginning, but you've just got to play them, because the only other option is to fold and give up. And I understand why people do. And like, because I think one of the biggest things for me has been how much I had to get better for. My support network was incredible. My family are really supportive, lots of friends. And some people just don't have that. Like, I was on the spinal unit for 3 months, and some people didn't have any visitors for that whole time. And you just think, wow, I just took for granted you're going to have friends and family to support you. And that was the reason we started the charity, really, was almost a sense of guilt over how fortunate I was to have this amazing support network around me. And I felt really sorry for people who didn't. So then we tried to, you know, provide that for them so it can motivate them to overturn the odds. And by overturn the odds, I don't necessarily mean getting better, physically better outside of your prognosis, but overturn the odds of the general consensus of your life's over. You need looking after. Oh, don't do that. You're going to be cared for. It's like, no, actually, my new life's just begun, and I'm going to do loads of stuff.
And a lot of the beneficiaries in the film reference that your ability to reframe and the kind of muscle that requires to reframe. And there's a moment where you're standing on the mountain going, please, like, don't focus on the things that aren't going right for you. There's always something, you know, and that kind of realization for you that you are, you know, on the top. And I think that was Snowdon at the time, that you're standing there going, I was told I wouldn't wiggle my toe, and here I am. And yes, there are problems and complications, but there's so much to be grateful for.
Yeah, exactly. And I've just realised how much of my time I used to spend worrying on stuff that was completely outside of my control. You know, other people's opinions, or things that I hadn't got yet, or things that might happen in the future, or regrets I had about the past. And it was all completely pointless. Like, all I had was the here and now. And like, obviously I've been given this dose of like gratitude to even be here, because, you know, one thing that did happen to me is I had to be resuscitated 3 times, you know,
which
in the ambulance.
Which you were obviously not aware of.
I wasn't aware of till
till
a year later, when my dad told me that the ambulance had taken 2 hours longer than I thought it took, because I had to be resuscitated 3 times. And that does make you does give you a dose of like how lucky you are to be here, and a dose of gratitude. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still get frustrated like anyone else. I still get annoyed with people. I still get, of
course,
but it doesn't last as long. And actually, I do just try and pursue and focus on the things that sort of fill me up and make me feel more positive and have more value to me now, without that fear of, oh, I shouldn't really be doing that, or you can't do that. It's just, I mean, all the things I'm doing now, I'd never have imagined I'd be doing. And none of it was planned. It was a change of emotion and like drive to follow my values rather than pursue what I should do.
The shoulds are kind of wiped away pretty quickly, I imagine.
Shoulds are gone, and it's like, and then the universe just starts sort of unraveling in your favour. And I don't get me wrong, I feel very fortunate to be in this position, obviously. But other people have been there before, and like I've been inspired by them, and all I'm trying to do now is pay that forward so other people can do it too.
I think that the vulnerability that you showed, which is so at odds probably with the rugby vibe. It was, there was moment in the film where you thought, oh wow, I've told this story before. So you've told it, factually as you're, setting up your life, if you like, but never connected with the reality of what happened in that day. And there was very moving moment where it was like as if it was yesterday. And I think that sensitivity and the vulnerability and the ability to connect with those emotions has given your community, people following you, the beneficiaries of your charity that you set up with Lois, your wonderful wife, who is funny as hell, by the way. She really made me laugh, and levity is massively, part of that approach. But it was genuinely a joy to watch.
I'm really glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah. Off to the Paralympics. Not like on track, but on telly, Although, I'm going to lay it down. He'll be here next time. Oh,
no, don't start that. I mean, it was a consideration for a while. Obviously, what's one thing the Paralympics does is give huge hope to people who are newly injured, who are interested in sport. Because you're like, you've got all these heroes to look up to now, and you see them doing amazing things. I am involved in the Paralympics, not as an athlete, working for Channel 4. So I'm going over to present the athletics, which I'm just so excited about. Yeah, brilliant. It's going to be great.
Well, have a ball. The Mountain Within Me is in cinemas the 23rd of August, and your charity, Millimetres to Mountains, is a wonder and a joy. Thank you so much, Ed Jackson.